Hi, Tanisha.
Hello.
Did you get wet in the storm?
No, but we lost power for a little bit.
Oh, but it's back on now.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, good. That storm yesterday was incredible.
Yeah, it was. It was a little crazy over here.
Look.
It's free. Call 1-800-408-0189. That's 1-800-408.
Hello.
Hello, kind sir. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I think I made it so that you can share.
Okay. I don't have a stand-up presentation. I was going to do a short demo instead.
Okay.
Are you waiting a few minutes or do I go and get started?
I was thinking we could wait a couple minutes, maybe till like 7:05, but I'm just to allow folks to get in and get started then.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Oh yeah, thanks for the invite and thanks for agreeing to let me on as well.
All right, I will go ahead and kick things off. I'm very excited today. We do not frequently get to do blue team things. So whenever we do, I'm very excited about it. We have with us today Duane Dunston, who is an information security professional and college professor, and he's going to be talking about threat emulation. You can check him out on Twitter at GNUGRO. Is it Nugro, Duane? Am I pronouncing that correct?
Gnugro.
Gnugro?
Yeah.
All right, cool. You should be able to share your screen and go ahead and kick things off. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, my name is Duane Dunston, and I live in Essex Junction, Vermont, and I teach at Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont. And I teach cybersecurity, and I started here in 2012, and I'm now an associate professor, and I'm actually on sabbatical this term because I'm working towards my doctorate degree in education. And I'm teaching a research class, or my research is a class I'm teaching, which is integrating 3 courses into one. So instead of being pulled in different directions, different classes, I'm trying to come up with this method of teaching where it's just focused for these first 2 years, especially. And I started in cybersecurity back in '97 in the education sector, and then moved up to work in the government doing security and incident response. My last 6 years was incident response, and it was really exciting. I'm not a doctor yet, but I'm loading. I'm getting close there. I started working in incident response, which if you ever have the opportunity to work in incident response, I would highly recommend it, because everything you know is going to push that further, because you're going to get exposed to things that you've never seen before. And that's what made the job exciting, because every day you never knew what you're going to walk into, especially on Fridays when everybody runs out of the office, because if a ticket comes in, it's yours. And I've been privy to some pretty exciting um, uh, things. I used to have my GSEC certification from SANS. I also had the GCIH because it was required for my job when I was in the government. And I haven't had any certs up until this past summer when I got my MITRE threat intelligence um, certification. And now I'm working with the Mosaic Institute on their threat intelligence analyst certification, which is a lot of fun. It's hard, it's challenging, but it's really, really enjoyable. And I got involved in threat emulation this summer because, I just wanted to, first of all, expand my skill set and do something different for a change. And when I came across that threat emulation, I realized how beneficial and powerful it can be for an organization. And by the way, is my audio okay? Coming through okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, cool. So threat emulation is very different from pen testing. With a pen test, you have typically a third party, or you can have an organization can have their own red team, which is the people on the inside that work for the organization, and they poke and prod at the system to see how they can get in before the bad guys do. But it's also what a pen test is, when you have a third party poke and prod at your network to see how far they can get in order to create a report and let you know how to mitigate any threats and or vulnerabilities, and also how to help determine what your threats are on the internet. But it's typically just that technical test from the outside perspective. Threat emulation differs from that because it is more of a blue team type exercise. And essentially with threat emulation, what you're doing is you are uh, pretending to be an adversary, and you have typically an agent that's installed. Well, let me just say some programs have agents and some are agentless. We have to provide credentials. And what it does is it simulates the behavior of what would happen if a threat actor or a ransomware attack was to bypass your controls. So it really is designed to determine what your current security controls, what they can protect against, what your monitoring tools can detect and alert you to. And in many cases, you want to disable your security controls because that simulates and emulates a threat actor. Because threat actors and threat groups, they are very typically well funded and they have the resources to perform pretty detailed, um, what's what I'm looking for, reconnaissance mission against their target. And they can find out very easily what what antivirus you're running, what software you're running, the people to target in the organization. And once they target those people, once they have that software in mind, what they're going to start doing is writing customized malware to bypass those defenses. So that's why threat emulation is really important, because it will show you what would happen if someone was able to bypass XYZ levels of controls. Now, when you first deploy your threat emulation software and you start to test it, it's okay if your security controls prevent it from doing what it's supposed to do. That's fantastic. And you want to document that. But you also want to disable that and then find out how much further can it go if it was to bypass that particular control. And it may sound like, well, it's kind of cheating. Well, not really, because threat actors don't cheat. They go in, they have a mission, and if they're really determined, they could bypass your controls. So you typically will have a threat emulation plan. Well, your threat emulation plan, it's always good if you have a red team and blue team. And if you ever heard of the term purple teaming, it's when the blue team and red team comes together. So purple teaming is a process. It's not a position that a person is in. It's a process with the red team and blue team coming together. The red team say, hey, we did these things. Did y'all see us? Blue team said, yes, we saw that. We did this. Did you see that? No, we didn't see that. Okay, that's a learning moment. We need to enable controls and monitoring that can either mitigate that vulnerability that the blue team didn't see, or enable logging so they get an early warning that something is going on within the organization. So that purple teaming is a really critical process, and it does require a red team and blue team that works together. It's not about, I mean, it's a fun competition. It's like a capture the flag within the organization, or a what is that? It's the big competition. I just lost the word. Oh, the NECCDC. That's the Northeast ECCDC, Northeast Cyber Collegiate Defense Competition. If you go to the nationals, thank you. If you go to the nationals, then you're up against people like Raphael Mudge, who wrote Cobalt Strike. And if you haven't heard of Cobalt Strike, it is a commercial application that's designed for threat emulation. But interesting enough, threat actors also use Cobalt Strike as part of their platform for attacking systems. And if you've never been involved with a threat actor in your systems, it's an unnerving experience to know that everything within your organization that's of value may be in the hands of other people. And it's hard to get rid of those threat actors if you don't follow proper processes and procedures. And I'm just covering this in case folks aren't familiar with this. One of the reasons why they say don't shut down machines when there's a potential attack is because if you alert the threat actors, they can either want one or two things. They start destroying things, which is not that likely, but they start to infect more computer systems. And the more systems they infect, the much more difficult it is to eradicate them from your system. So you have to follow an incident response and have an incident response plan in place in order to learn to mitigate these threats. And you're welcome to post questions into the chat channel, so I'm just not talking and talking and talking. But what I want to do is I want to show you a demonstration of a threat emulation platform. Many of those are freely available. There's one called the Atomic Red Team. That's an open source, PowerShell based platform that allows you to test your security controls. And what it does, let me bring up the MITRE framework. And I want to share my screen in just a moment, please. I'm going to cover this MITRE framework just to provide some context. Let's see who can share. That's not what I want. There we go. You can use my screen that has a MITRE attack.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you have not heard of the MITRE attack framework, what you see on the screen is the matrix of this MITRE attack. 6 months ago, I did not understand this thing because I've heard about it. I see it all the time, over the last few years. But just looking at this can be pretty daunting until you learn how this all works. And I can tell you now, I got my certification from MITRE in threat intelligence using MITRE attack, and the training for that is free through cybrary.it. If you search for MITRE attack, you'll see the threat intelligence coursework, and you can listen to that at no charge and learn how this all works. There's also a MITRE attack foundation course, and that's the one that goes into detail that explains how the MITRE attack framework works. It's completely free. It's open source. There's a GitHub repository with the attack framework, and I've downloaded this entire website via their GitHub page. You can download the entire site. And they also have this navigator, which I'll show to you in just a few minutes as well. So the MITRE attack framework documents TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures. Tactics, which you see across the top here, tactics. Techniques, which we see going down each one of these here. And then procedures, what the actual adversary is doing. So TTPs. And what differentiates the MITRE attack from other methods of identifying malicious activity is that it goes to a level that's very difficult for threat adversaries to change, and that's their behavior. So these geez, that's like a tongue twister. These TTPs are designed to show you the behavior and allow you to look at your log systems, look at your logs, look at any kind of alerts that you're receiving, and determine if these threat actors are the ones targeting your systems. So if we look at this first tactic here, reconnaissance, this is basic information gathering. And quite honestly, this is very difficult to protect against because a lot of information is already out there about organizations. Their website talked about who they are. They have domains. There's a lot of tools you can use to crawl websites and determine what domains are for an organization. You can use Google dorking, Google hacking for this reconnaissance aspect of it. The one I want to talk about, just to explain how things are, is this initial access right here, initial access. That is, how did it actually get into the organization? How did it get into your systems? Phishing is one of the very common techniques. And with spear phishing, you're going to have typically one of three methods in which they gain access. You're going to have, well, phishing, first of all, is a generic term, and that's when someone sends information to a bunch of people all at once. And they're hoping that someone's going to provide the information that they're phishing for, username and password, or gain access to a bank account, PayPal account, a retirement account, etc. Spear phishing is different because it's very targeted. And during the reconnaissance phase, what they're going to do is target your network to see, okay, who does what work in this organization? And they kind of use psychology and best practices themselves, the threat actors do, to determine who to target. And they're going to try to go after either the CEOs, VPs, because the saying goes is that they're the least technically savvy. They probably won't recognize that this is a spear phishing attack, or human resource personnel, for example. And if they do enough homework, if they do enough reconnaissance, it's very likely someone's going to click that link. They may send it to 5, 6, 7 people, just that many people. If one click that link, then they can get access into the organization potentially. And if you work incident response, one of the things I think you'll come away from is it's very difficult to blame users when they click a link or download an attachment and open it. Because if enough homework is done, those threat actors can create an email that looks very, very realistic. And you look at it and you're probably going to say to yourself, yes, I probably would have clicked that too. So phishing is one of the mechanisms they use to gain access. Now, the way this attack framework is developed is if I click on spear phishing attachment here, it takes me to the MITRE ATT&CK site and explains to me, first of all, what is phishing? And then it goes into talking about the various threat groups and the types of attachments that they use. So they have mappings for all of these threat groups. For example, I'm going to click one of these, APT1. And what they have for ATP1, APT1 is all the procedures, the TTPs for this particular threat group. This is all the known techniques that they use and tools they use to gain access into a system, to discover information, to persist, things of that nature. But what this MITRE ATT&CK framework does, gives you a description, threat groups, but most importantly, mitigations. How can you mitigate a spear phishing attack? And you see some recommendations right here. And if you click on those, you get even more information about this type of mitigation. And then it goes into detection as well. How do you actually determine if someone is going to a phishing site, for example? And there's technology that you can employ to detect that. In the top right-hand corner is other really important information. Every technique, every TTP has a unique ID number. And we can see it is .001. This means that it's a specific procedure. It's dot and then a number. And it's a sub-technique of T1566, which is phishing. So this is a sub-technique. It's a sub-technique or a procedure of phishing. And this is a tactic that is used, initial access, that we just looked at, the platforms that target. And these are the most common operating systems out there. So that's why they have these 3 here. But it also shows you what data sources can you use to actually detect a spear phishing attack. And then it gives some other information, metadata about this particular procedure. So this MITRE ATT&CK framework is very powerful, especially once you learn how to navigate it. And there are procedures in here that I just don't even know anything about because I don't ever deal with them. Like implant internal image, I do nothing with that. But if you want to learn about it, it's all built right into this attack website. So it's a very powerful and useful tool for organizations and for security professionals to make use of. And I'm going to explain all this because this will all come into play in just a moment. So this is the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. And what this is a web-based platform that allows you to create maps or heat maps, they call them, of attack procedures. So if you're in your own organization and you detect there's some threat going on with your organization, what you can do is I'm sorry, I did it too fast. My apologies for that. My apologies. Go back here. You can go ahead and create this new layer. And you see they have 3 different platforms this applies to: enterprise, mobile platforms, or industrial control systems. Most folks use the enterprise right here. And there are many other options that you can select and other things you can do. So I mentioned the cyberary.it has a free training with MITRE. There's also attackiq.com. They also have free training, and I like theirs a lot better because they go into details and have labs to show you how to use Navigator, for example, in depth. So you get to learn how to use these heat maps in much more detail. And these are the different attack versions. Right now I'm going to version 9.
Mr. Dunston,
Yes.
could you say again that other software that you said you liked kind of better?
Oh, yes. The website is attackiq.com.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so I'm going with the enterprise here, and I click create. And this creates a map of the MITRE attack framework. And so let's say, I'm a security professional, and I noticed that there was a phishing attempt, and they used spear phishing. What you can come in here and do is select spear phishing attachment. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details with this, but you can change the color so this stands out on the map here. And then after they did spear phishing, let's say you saw that they executed a Powershell script. So you can go here and select this as well. So you can customize this for your own organization and for your own use, by all means. Yeah, with the Attack IQ, if you click on the Academy, you create an account and you get free training. It has quizzes, and they have little certificates as well that you can add to your LinkedIn profile, things like that. I really like that platform. So you see with each one of these tactics, there's these techniques here, and some of them have sub-procedures, which shows you with command and scripting, it's going to be one of these applications that allow them to execute commands, for example. So attack is very powerful. And the reason why I'm going through all of this is because this factors into threat emulation. Because I'm going to create a new layer, click on the plus sign up here, create new layer, enterprise. What MITRE has in this navigator is they have a listing of known threat groups, known malicious software, and also various mitigations here. So if I click on APT1, let's do a different one. It has a lot of stuff to it. APT41, I click select. Probably can't see it very well. I'm going to color code these. So this is all the activity that's associated with APT41. Now, if you were in an industry that APT41 was targeting, what you would want to do is you want to create a threat emulation plan that simulates this behavior. Correction, it emulates this behavior. Simulate is a little bit different. Emulate means you're actually going to execute and perform the very techniques that they perform. Simulate means it's kind of like a tabletop exercise. Okay, this happened. What are we going to do? Well, with emulation, you're actually doing it. So with the MITRE attack, you're able to create a visual map of an attack. And this is a side benefit of MITRE. This provides a good visualization to help executives understand what you're defending against. Because if I just talk about file and directory discovery, it's really abstract if you're not technical. But with this, you can see it and understand what it's actually telling you. Another benefit is that if I go down to mitigations here, and let's say my mitigation was execution prevention. I'm going to click on select here. I want to color code this yellow. You see how that just changed that entire threat landscape? If you had execution protection, you basically can mitigate APT 41 in your organization. So that's easy for someone to see. Oops, I want to do that. Yes. So someone can actually see the change from APT 41 to threat mitigation. Let me do that one more time. And we'll get to the threat mitigation demo in just a moment. APT 41 select. There we go. And I'm going to color code this. All right. And there, and with MITRE, with that attack IQ training, they show you how to take two layers that you see on the screen right here, these two layers. They show you how to take these and overlay them with each other so you can see it much clearer, which is a really cool benefit. So here's the execution protection. Here is APT 41. So you can see with just these two techniques right here, but just look at these two, exploit and external remote access. You can see how enabling execution prevention, if you have execution prevention as a security control in your organization, like Windows has native application control, for example, you can basically mitigate the threat vector right here. But notice how you just get a lot more protection in your organization. Hope you can see that difference there. Bad guys, security control. Bad guys, security control. So executives can see that, like, oh, this is why we need to spend this amount of money for execution prevention. So the question in the chat is about how often they update zero-day exploits. MITRE doesn't, I don't know how often they do the updates. It's based on how much information is actually coming into them. So you may see an update once a year or maybe 2 times a year, depending on how much information is out there. But the benefit, though, is that if you know of a 0 day, you can contribute that as a heat map, and they can post it on their GitHub repository, and people can download that as well. So just explain that a little bit, just an example. There are some heat maps. Let me bring up one for a demonstration. Did that respond to your question, by the way? Okay, cool. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's because my thing right there. This 853. Map. I should have had this ready just in case this question came up. There we go. There we are. So if any of you are in the government, there's this GitHub repository of all the NIST 853 controls that they mapped to MITRE. And if I, there we go. So here's the link. It's all in JSON format. With the attack navigator, you can open an existing layer using a URL right here. So I'm going to paste that JSON file right here. I pasted it into this load from URL right here. And I click this little, you can't see it very well, this little arrow right there. And what that does is it loads in what AC2 protects, helps to either protect against or monitor with your within your organization. So if you were a target for APT 41, you can see how it protects against some of the controls, some of the exploits. external remote services. See how it's not protected against remote services. So if you have AC2 in place, APT41 could not get in via these methods, but could get in via this method, and yeah, valid accounts right there. Yeah. Any questions about that? Does it make sense? I hope that all made sense there. um, so let's take a look at threat emulation. No problem. So once you have a heat map ready, and you're ready to start planning the exercise, one thing you want to do is determine what do I want to, what systems do I want to emulate this on? And you want to do a couple of things. One is have test systems, but test systems that look exactly like your real network, system of your network. But it's recommended to actually put them on the systems that could be targeted because you have control over that. So here's Caldera. And Caldera is one threat emulation platform, which is freely available, also provided by NIST. There's also Infection Monkey. I mentioned Atomic Red Team. There's commercial tools like Scythe. I don't know how you pronounce that. It's scythe.io. And there's, on the internet, you can find quite a few threat emulation platforms out there. But Caldera is really available through MITRE. You can also import the Atomic Red Team plugins. You can import those into MITRE, into Caldera, and have it run on remote systems. So after you log in, you're going to see this screen here. And one cool thing about Caldera, there's also a spinoff of this called Prelude, which is freely available. And they also have a subscription, like $50 a month, to get additional pre-configured plugins. And I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But they have this really cool training platform with Caldera. So if you click on this training right here, uh-oh, I lost my session. Hold on just a moment, I'm sorry. Settings. I think I closed out. Like I lost my tunnel for some reason. Okay, fly. Uh-oh. Give me just a moment. I'm sorry, folks. This is the issue with live demonstrations, right? So the training platform within Caldera allows you to learn how to use the tool. And as you configure the system, what it does is has a daemon running in the background. And once you've configured it based on how the particular test or training test is expecting, then you basically get points for it essentially, which is a really cool feature. And do another login session here. This apply. All right. And now that's the system I'm going to right. So once you've have it installed, I'm going to increase the font size so you can see this. See this better? Apply. Once you have it installed, then you start up the server. And it's insecure because it runs on the loopback interface. And I'm going to reload this. Ready? Okay. Oh, I got to add my tunnel back in now. Change settings. Tunnels. I closed out my earlier session by mistake, so it killed my connectivity. There we go. So after you log in, you get this screen here. And when you click on training, you have these two options here. You want to start with the user certificate, and it takes you through the process. You have about, 21 different training exercises. And you can see the first one here is to demonstrate that you can load and install an agent. And when you hover over it, it flips over and gives you more details about what the agent is. So essentially in this context, Caldera uses an agent-based emulation platform. So it simulates a malicious software as acting as a beacon, if you will, on your system. Oops. There it goes. It simulates a malicious actor on the system. And I'll show you how this all works. But once you go through each one of these, and as soon as you install an agent, this is automatically going to be checked to green, and then you can go to the next exercise. So it's a really nice platform. But the best part about it is it has a solution guide if you get stuck. And it walks you through the process of how to complete all of their training activities. And once you go through this first user certificate, you'll have a really good idea of how Caldera works, and you'll be able to run this within, an hour or two of testing. So let's install that agent. So right now I got all these bogus agents, and they are just for playing around and testing things. They don't really do anything. I'm going to deploy one on my Windows laptop that I'm on right now. So I'm going to click here to deploy an agent. I'm going to use Go. I'm going to select Windows because that's when I'm going to install my agent. And now it has this information down here of what I need to copy and paste into my PowerShell screen, or in this case, my scripting environment. But what I'm going to do, you see how it has 000 right here? This is the IP address for the Caldera server, which acts as a C2C, the command and control server. And notice how when I type in this information, it updates it automatically. 172.16.64.148:8888. There we go. And see how it puts in the information for me. So all I have to do now is copy this. I want you to see it connect. I'm going to paste it into my interpreter here. So here's a C2C server. This is what Caldera is running. It's going to download a Windows-based Go binary, and it's going to place that. This is the standard header stuff for download over HTTP. It's safe to run this on a regular PC. You can run this on a VM if it emulates exactly your production computers. But really, it's best to put these on your production systems so you can see how it's going to respond to these types of attacks. And this simulates a real issue where you have malware that installs itself into the public folder because it's readable and writable by anybody. So it's going to download it there. And it's going to name it Super Scary. You probably didn't see that. Okay. So here is my directory. It's going to install in. Give me just a moment. I don't know why I closed my windows. It just kind of threw everything off. Okay, here we go. Here's the public folder that's going to install in. I'm going to click here. I'm trying to position these. I'm going to run this. It's now downloading it from the C2C server, a Caldera system here. And once it's downloaded, it's going to connect back to this server, and the agent's going to show up in this list here. So you see it show up right there, super scary. And you see it show up in my Caldera server. So this simulated malware installing on my computer and communicating back to the command and control server, okay? If I click on this ID, you can see there's the host name, there's my username. I'm logged in as a normal user, not an admin. This is the location of it. It's telling me, the person in charge of this control C2C server, where it's located and things like that, all right? And so let me install one more on a Linux system. Here's Zeek. I hope y'all can see my font okay with this one. Do the exact same thing. I'm going to click here to deploy an agent. See, my settings are already there like I just had before. I'm going to click on Linux. And all I have to do is download, copy and paste this. And it's going to do the exact same thing. Should I copy that in my buffer? There we go. Enter. And I'm running as root in this case. You can run as a normal user. Okay, see this activity is beaconing. And you see how it showed up right there. So this again simulates malicious actor on my Linux system. And they've now have access to my system. And on the command and control side, I can see that the user is running as root. And there's super scary. That's my shell, platform, etc. And it's going to beacon, I think, every 30 seconds, or something like that. Yeah, every 30 seconds. So let's run a quick job now. So now that I have 2 agents installed, the agent was able to install the method here was me copying and pasting these settings right here. And this is the command and control server. This downloaded the Go binary for the Linux platform, and it copied it into this file called Super Scary and made it executable. So once that executed, you can see how it went out to my server based on the address right here. And it's using the HTTP protocol. And now it is connected to my command and control server. So what this is simulating is someone clicked the spear phishing email, downloaded an attachment, and the attachment had an infection, had malware inside of it, and it's simulating it it's simulating it performing these activities here. And the same thing on the Windows side. Powershell is it's become a much more popular method for infections. So this simulates a PowerShell script that's embedded in a link or an attachment of some sort, and then it performs this activity to download the file and connect back to the C2C server. Yes, it does assume you have the underlying environment to run these scripts, like a Windows or Linux. Yes, but some organizations block PowerShell. And in that case, that's the case, and the agents here, you can select to use a Go based agent. And what it does, even though they disable PowerShell scripts, you can still run PowerShell from the command line. You can't run a .ps1 file, but you can run PowerShell commands though. So that's how it gets around that particular restriction. Okay, really, really important to understand that you can't run a script maybe, but you can still run the commands directly. All right, let's run a quick operation here. So I'm going to go here. First of all, there's lots of options here. You can emulate human behavior. This is the full documentation. If you want to use atomic red team, which are a set of PowerShell scripts. So I'm going to click on operations here. Click on add. I'm going to call this my initial collection. Under basic options, you have these existing adversarial profiles. Now, within your environment, if you sometimes you work in an environment where you can't share information about threats or attacks within your organization. But what you can do is use Caldera to create a profile of how that threat works in your organization. And then you could emulate it here, for example, or create your own customized one. So I'm going to select collection just to demonstrate how this works. Then I'm going to automatically close the operation. I'm going to run it immediately. Lots of other settings here, but I'm not going to go over all of those right now. So I'm going to collect information and then click start right here. Now, one thing Caldera has, which is really cool, is it has a red team, blue team capability. So as a blue team are performing these activities here, you can go to game board, and here's my current collection as a red team. And the blue team has to detect all these attacks going on right here. So it's like you can have it as a competition to see if they're detecting anything. And they have to create their own operation to add to this here. So it can be fun in an organization. Now notice I clicked away from that collection. I'm going back to my operations here. And you see that's my operation that I just created. I click on it and it resumes. Okay. So it ran these commands here on the system. And whenever you see a gold star, that means there's information that you can see. So here you can see the PowerShell command that was executed. In this case, looking for WAV files. You can edit these as well for your own organization. And then it gave me a list of all the WAV files found in my directory. And I mentioned there were some agents there that were like dummy accounts. They're just there for testing. But what interests me are the ones that I installed my agent on, the real agent on. So I'm just looking at these, and here they're currently running, and it's waiting for the agents to respond with any information. There we go. That's not one of them. Oh, and up here is where you can control the operation. You can pause it. This is good if there's a test running that's causing some disruption. Typically that doesn't happen unless you customize something and it breaks things. But you can also set it so that you have to approve each test it runs. So you can skip over things, or you can have it run at a much slower pace. Especially if you're doing like a blue team, red team exercise, then you can click on, I'm not gonna click it, but manual is what it shows. And then you select when you want to run a particular test, which becomes a lot of fun and interesting. And you see how now look at the PNG files. So this is simulating what bad actors do. This is simulating their behavior. Here's my Linux system. It's returning the path for a YAML file. YAML file sometimes contains very sensitive information that an attacker needs. This staging directory is going to copy the data that it found, the files it found, into your temp directory, and then it's going to pull it down to your C2C server. So it simulates moving data out of the organization, exfiltrating. And this is where you can see if your network intrusion detection systems or other capabilities can detect exfiltration going on with an attack. So it's creating the staging directory here. You can see right here, h:staged is what it created to put all the files. And then on my Linux system, it's under the root directory /staged. Cleanup meaning it's deleting the directories. That's the command that it ran. And it's finished. Cool. So the reports are in a JSON format, so it's not very pretty. So you will have to do some coding to interpret the results. But everything you need is right here as well, which you can then copy and paste if needed. Any event logs that were created during the scan, what worked, what didn't work, and why, etc. So once the scan is finished, those results are always available to you. So you can go back in and look at those at a later time. Let's see. You can scan Wi-Fi networks, which you see right here. System processes. See all the processes run on the system. This is what attackers do. This is how they can see this stuff on the back end. You see, there's my malicious agent. So that was a really quick rundown of how to run a scan to do threat emulation. Really, the best way to do it is to download as my ARP table. So this is a full collection. You see right here. This collection right here, where it's getting network information from our system. And if that was the case for this particular attack, then I would go to collection and I would select data from local system because it scanned for local users. So I would highlight that as the activity. Data was staged, we saw that. So I would highlight that as well. So that becomes my map for this particular operation. Red and green nodes, let's see. Right here. Oh, I see what you're asking. Not necessarily, because, I'm sorry, I see what you're asking. These green, these red right here, yes. Here, I got an error message. Here, I got an error message. But right here, I got results, but it's an error, but I did get some results back. Yes, I see what you're asking. My apologies. Okay. So Caldera has a lot of features. I scratched the surface. I scratched the surface. Lots of things you can do with this platform. And there's really good videos and tutorials on how to use this platform on YouTube. And the training platform that it has works incredibly well. Once you go through the basic user level, then you move to the Blue Certificate. And this is where you start to get into more advanced aspects, advanced uses of Caldera. Yes, it is. This emulates the behavior. So once again, um, Caldera is the C2C server. It's located out on the internet somewhere, and we simulated installing agents on a Windows system, and you saw how it downloaded this super scary and executed it and connected back to the C2C server. So this is why you want to put these on your actual systems, because quite honestly, the basic collection, it doesn't cause any performance hits on production systems. So if you have a domain controller, maybe you can set up a separate domain controller, but run it and see what you can collect from that domain controller, what it's capable of doing. And I can tell you right now, if you have a domain controller and you install an agent and it connected back to your C2C server, and that C2C server outside of your network, I highly recommend you block internet access from all domain controllers. They should not have direct access to the internet. A subset of category scripts that typically allow. Oh yes, yes, there are a subset of scripts and also commands. Any commands you run that can collect information, task list, ARP, ARP-A, netstat, get process, those things that you run, net user, net groups, net local admins, those same commands you use for your day-to-day admin task are the exact same commands that attackers run to collect information. Yes, the system I have right here, Zeek, this is an Ubuntu system server right here. And it works on Mac OS as well. And I use Zero Tier. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really great utility to create point-to-point communication between systems, really fast as well. So this is all running over a secure channel so that I don't trip off our team here. I'm still on campus. This is so I don't trip off any IDS sensors. But this server here is located somewhere in the Midwest. I forgot where. My Windows workstation is here on campus in Burlington, and my C2C server is in Essex Junction. So I'm demonstrating this over a distributed network. And Tanisha, do you typically allow audio in case folks want to ask questions towards the
Yes.
end? Okay.
So I think that they should be able to unmute themselves if they would like to at this point, and ask questions, or they can type them into the chat.
And I hope I didn't talk too fast because I get excited about security, and I start to blah 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 blah. So.
I got a question.
Yes.
So with the I guess they said the C2C environment, is it normally Linux, or is it OS independent, or do they normally have their own, like, is there a common operating system that they, I guess, attack from? Or does that matter?
Let me go here and then to field manual. Mine's running on a Linux environment, which you can install on a virtual machine, for example. And I think all the instructions are for Linux. Yes. Yes. Linux or Mac. There we go.
I was just wondering, because I mean, it seems like there's different means or different attacks, and kind of like what you've shown so far. Mm-hmm. We've shown like 2 or 3 different languages: the Go, PowerShell,
and Python.
Like it sort of seems agnostic, but I didn't know if there's like a kind of like Java is like an independent platform.
Yep.
And if there was some kind of, independent language that you run on top of any kind of OS that these things normally run.
Pretty much Go. Go is platform independent.
Is that like a common thing for these kind of tools, or like
Yes,
do they just
yes.
do they have a like a library that's like the go-to for everybody with security? Is that why it goes picked?
I think Go is picked because it's OS and OS agnostic. You write your code on Linux or Windows. You compile it, and you compile it for all platforms.
Got it.
Yeah, which is something really cool about the Go language. Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, if we don't have any further questions, Duane, I just want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with us tonight. I know I definitely learned a lot, so I'm very excited that we were able to see this. So definitely appreciate your time.
Well, again, I thank you for allowing me to present, and I appreciate you folks for attending, and I hope you're able to take something away from that. I hope you get a chance to play around with this. It's open source, and there's lots of tutorials to show you how to use it and do things in more depth as well. You folks are welcome. Appreciate you coming out.
All right. Well, thank you. You guys can follow Duane on, I know at least Twitter, GNUGRO. Are you on Instagram and LinkedIn as well?
LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I don't use Instagram.
Okay. All right. Cool.
LinkedIn, yes.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Everyone have a good night.